Can an entire country actually go bankrupt? Or is that just a headline designed to scare people? Unlike businesses or individuals, countries don't shut down the same way, but they can run out of money. Today, we're breaking down what it really means when a nation defaults on its debt, how it happens, and what the consequences look like for citizens and the global economy. Today, we will talk about, can a country go bankrupt? Explained. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. 1. What does bankruptcy mean for a country? When we hear the word bankruptcy, we usually think about individuals or companies that cannot repay their debts. But can a country go bankrupt in the same way? Technically, countries do not declare bankruptcy like businesses do because there is no global court that forces them to liquidate assets. Instead, when a country cannot repay its debt, it is called a sovereign default. This happens when a government fails to make interest or principal payments on its bonds. Unlike companies, countries cannot be shut down or sold. However, default can damage their financial reputation and limit access to international borrowing. Sovereign debt issues are complex because governments can raise taxes, print money, or restructure debt to avoid collapse. So while a country cannot close down, it can face serious financial crises that resemble bankruptcy in many ways. 2. Why countries borrow money. Governments borrow money to fund public services, infrastructure, defense, healthcare, and social programs. They issue bonds to investors, promising to repay with interest. Borrowing helps finance projects that promote economic growth. However, if spending consistently exceeds revenue from taxes, debt levels can grow rapidly. Moderate borrowing is normal and manageable, especially for strong economies. Problems arise when debt grows faster than the economy itself. If investors begin doubting a country's ability to repay, they demand higher interest rates. This increases borrowing costs and worsens financial strain. Countries with weak economic growth, political instability, or poor financial management are more vulnerable. Borrowing becomes dangerous when governments rely heavily on new debt just to repay old obligations. Sustainable debt depends on economic productivity, stable policies, and responsible fiscal management over time. 3. What causes a sovereign default? A sovereign default can happen for several reasons. Economic recessions reduce tax revenue while increasing government spending on social support. Political instability can disrupt financial planning and investor confidence. Currency crises may also trigger default, especially if a country borrows heavily in foreign currencies. If the local currency weakens, repaying foreign debt becomes more expensive. Excessive borrowing, corruption, or mismanagement can worsen the situation. External shocks such as global financial crises, pandemics, or commodity price collapses may push vulnerable countries over the edge. When governments can no longer meet debt obligations, they may suspend payments. Default damages credit ratings, reduces foreign investment, and weakens the economy further. Recovery often requires restructuring debt agreements with creditors and implementing economic reforms. 4. Can big economies go bankrupt? Large economies with strong currencies are less likely to default, but it is not impossible. Countries that control their own currency have more flexibility because they can print money to meet obligations. However, excessive money printing can cause high inflation or even hyperinflation. Advanced economies usually have stronger institutions and diversified industries, which provide financial resilience. Investors generally trust stable governments with transparent policies. However, if debt becomes extremely high and political disagreements prevent fiscal reforms, risks can increase. Financial markets monitor debt to GDP ratios closely. While large economies have tools to prevent default, poor management or extreme crises can still create severe economic challenges. 5. What happens if a country defaults? When a country defaults, financial consequences are serious. Credit ratings drop sharply, making future borrowing more expensive or even impossible. Foreign investors may withdraw capital, causing currency depreciation. Inflation can rise as import costs increase. Government spending may be reduced, affecting public services and salaries. Banks holding government bonds may suffer losses, creating instability in the financial system. International organizations like the IMF may step in with emergency loans, often requiring strict economic reforms. Citizens may face unemployment, reduced purchasing power, and economic hardship. Recovery from default can take years and requires rebuilding trust with investors. 6. Debt restructuring and bailouts. Instead of complete collapse, many countries choose debt restructuring. This means renegotiating terms with creditors to extend repayment periods, reduce interest rates, or partially forgive debt. Creditors may accept restructuring to avoid total losses. International institutions sometimes provide bailout packages to stabilize economies. These programs often include conditions such as spending cuts or tax reforms. While restructuring provides relief, it can be politically unpopular. Citizens may protest austerity measures required by lenders. Despite short-term pain, restructuring can restore financial stability if reforms are implemented effectively. Successful recovery depends on economic growth and improved fiscal discipline. 7. The role of currency printing. Countries that issue debt in their own currency have more options during crises. They can print money to repay domestic debt. However, this strategy carries risks. Increasing money supply without corresponding economic growth can lead to inflation. In extreme cases, hyperinflation destroys savings and weakens the economy. Printing money may solve short-term liquidity problems but creates long-term economic challenges if overused. Countries borrowing in foreign currencies lack this flexibility. They must earn foreign reserves through exports or borrowing. Currency management is therefore critical in preventing sovereign financial crises. 8. Historical examples of default. Several countries have experienced sovereign default throughout history. Nations facing economic mismanagement or external shocks have suspended debt payments. Defaults often follow periods of high borrowing and weak growth. In many cases, recovery required years of reforms and negotiations. Financial markets tend to remember defaults, which affects future borrowing costs. However, countries can recover and regain investor confidence with strong economic policies. History shows that while default is damaging, it is not always permanent. Economic restructuring, improved governance, and sustainable growth strategies can rebuild financial credibility over time. 9. How it affects citizens. When a country faces financial crisis or default, ordinary citizens feel the impact most. Inflation may reduce purchasing power. Unemployment can rise as businesses struggle. Government services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure projects may face budget cuts. Taxes might increase to stabilize finances. Savings can lose value during currency depreciation. Economic uncertainty affects long-term planning for families and businesses. However, with effective reforms and international support, economies can gradually stabilize. As 10. Can bankruptcy be avoided? While countries can experience severe debt crises, complete bankruptcy in the traditional sense is unlikely. Governments have tools such as taxation, spending adjustments, monetary policy, and restructuring to manage debt. Strong institutions, transparent governance, and sustainable fiscal planning reduce default risk. Economic diversification and steady growth strengthen repayment capacity. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.